All right, hello there, and welcome to the Week 13 Collaborate session. Now, just got one brief bit of housekeeping here before we get started, and that is that we are not going to have a session next week. It will be the holiday week, and I want you guys to be focused on doing the revisions on the proposal because you won't have a lot of time to do that, considering everybody's got holiday plans, I'm sure. So we will not have a Collaborate session next week. However, the week after, we will have a session. It'll be basically a question and answer session. Both weeks will have lectures, okay? So do keep an eye out for those lectures, all right? So the plan for today is we're going to go through the slides for this week. It was a short slideshow, so we'll do the slides, we'll do some questions, and then we will talk over what you guys just turned in, which is the Antibibliography. If you have turned it in, I appreciate that. Just want to talk over some of the patterns that I'm noticing in the stuff I've been seeing. All right. So let's go ahead and go through these slides. We're talking about argument with purpose this week. And let's take a look here. All right, the purpose of an argument is where we're starting here. The argument essays you've been written up to this point in this class have been primarily arguments that exist for the reason of intellectual exercise, okay? Classical argument rhetoric has its roots in the earliest forms of rhetoric pioneered by philosophers. If you've ever heard of philosopher dialogues that date back to ancient Greece, that is exactly what they're doing. They're basically documenting arguments that they had in the academy, where they're basically just using them as intellectual exercises. All right. Evaluations, on the other hand, have a very focused, very limited purpose as only intended to express an opinion rather than urge action. Okay. So again, it's more of an intellectual exercise than anything. You can act on it if you want to, but you don't have to. Okay. Proposal essay, on the other hand, has a twofold purpose. It's being used to create a solution to a pressing problem and to convince the audience that that's correct, okay? So as you're arguing your proposal, you have to have the weight of rhetoric behind it, not only to prevail in terms of getting your point across, but also to prevail in terms of winning the argument so that your proposal gets put into practice, okay? So this falls under two categories of the purpose of argument. So one of them is arguing to solve a problem. All right. Typically, both sides of an argument have a vested shared interest in the subject of the argument and the outcome of the dispute. Very normally, you have people who are directly involved with the argument who are trying to make their case and trying to get their solution put into practice. Okay. The arguments on both sides in this case are intended to present competing solutions for resolving the dispute, solving the problem in their own ways, okay? So you got different viewpoints and different perspectives on what's actually going to solve that problem. The persuasive element that then becomes convincing the audience affected by the dispute of which side has the best solution. So now you have to talk over why your side is the one that people should go with, why you have the right answer, okay? But keep in mind, though, that the best solution does not always equate to the right solution, okay? That's where we get into things like Rogerian argument, where we have to take both sides into account and understand that there may be certain circumstances where this is the right way to go. However, there may also be certain circumstances where we need to go this way because there's really not an alternative here. Okay, we don't have the right circumstances to enact this solution, so we're going to have to go with this maybe slightly lesser solution. Okay, but the other thing to keep in mind with solving a problem is winning the argument does not always equate with action. So you may be arguing that there is no problem, we need to keep things status quo, or you may be saying to prevent a problem from happening, we need to not institute this change. Okay, so keep in mind, not all does not always mean something's going to happen if you win the argument. Right? So this is one of the most commonplace occasions for creating and putting forth an argument when you're trying to solve a problem. There are 3 concrete examples that Yagelski gives of topics which lead to arguments being presented as problems requiring a solution. I'm going to try to get that up in my textbook here. Forgive me for a second. Here we go. Here we go. All right. All right, I have listed all 3 of them here, but we'll try to expand on it a little bit, okay? So one possible reason to argue to solve a problem. Members of a student organization decide whether to spend surplus funds on new equipment, okay? They may be trying to debate over how they should spend that excess funding. Maybe they each have individual ideas of what they want to do. Maybe they all have ideas about where the money should go. Maybe we should give it to charity. Maybe we should give it to people less fortunate. Maybe we should give it to a food bank. Maybe we should buy a margarita machine, whatever. Okay? So these are reasons why the organization might want to argue for what the best way is to spend that money. Another example, community residents debate whether to increase property taxes to build a new school building. Okay? You may recall in the lecture video I mentioned the concept of the millage, which seems to be a idea that seems to be exclusive to the Midwest, but it does rely on the residents of a township, residents of a city to vote to voluntarily increase their taxes in order to fund something, okay? Even though the amount is usually fairly small on the individual level, it does wind up adding up to a fairly large amount of money. And people will sometimes try to argue that we need this, and they have to try to win over people who maybe think that they don't really need it because why should they care? Okay. So community residents may want to try to come up with a argument to try to prove that they need to solve this problem and they need the funding to do it. All right, the third one, parents and school officials debate the best measures for increasing safety at their elementary school. Okay, so this is where you get into debates about whether they should institute maybe no gun zones, no drug-free zones, the installation of campus resource officers, things like that. This is stuff that would be argued to try to solve a problem, and in this case, the problem is what is doable to help increase personal security on campus. Okay, both sides of each of these arguments has a vested interest in its outcome because they're directly affected by those outcomes, whether it's good or bad. Therefore, each side argues what they feel is the best possible solution. Okay, what's going to benefit them in the long run. Okay. Unless, again, they're arguing with Rogerian argument, in which case what's going to be best for everyone in the long run, which is really kind of a better way of approaching things, if you think about it. All right. And that gets us to the other element to these proposals, and that is arguing to prevail. Okay. All the other purposes of argument we've seen thus far have been we're arguing to get ideas out there and get people thinking. Arguing to prevail is much different. Arguing to prevail is, I am arguing to win this thing. I need to win this argument. I have to win this argument. Sometimes arguing to prevail is a matter of life and death. Okay? This is probably the most concrete possible purpose for an argument. There are consequences from the outcome of the argument, so one side or the other must win. Okay? There is no friendly debate here. One side must win, one side must lose. Okay? An argument to prevail is an argument that must take precedence and rise above any opposing arguments to win the argument. Commonly, these types of arguments are involved with high-stakes disputes where inaction is not an option, and actions one way or another will greatly negatively affect whichever group comes up short. Okay, so the stakes are much higher in an argument to prevail, typically. Okay, so you might be asking what kind of circumstances we have for that. Okay. Arguments to prevail are usually involved in important and controversial subjects, such as the examples that Yagelski gives. Okay, First one, students make a strong case against allowing a controversial anti-immigrant organization to demonstrate on campus. Okay. This comes down to a matter of the students who are arguing against it feel that it's going to intimidate the immigrant students on campus, so they don't want anything to do with it. They don't want that. They don't want that business coming to campus. So they're protesting and they're arguing that this group should not be allowed to demonstrate. Okay, because all they're going to do is make people feel bad across the campus. So that's why they have to prevail here. If they can prevail, they can keep the peace. Okay. Second one, members of a law enforcement organization argue against the state's adoption of stand your ground to self-defense laws, which they believe lead to more gun violence. Okay. I don't think I really need to elucidate a lot much more on this. Suffice to say, these things are one of the reasons why we have the Black Lives Matter movement. Okay. Third one, a resident strenuously opposes a town bill restricting gas drilling on the grounds that will deprive residents of much needed income. Okay, so the argument to prevail here is you have one side that's saying we need to preserve the environment, and the other side is saying we need to line our pockets. Okay, so they're going to have a compelling argument either way to get the decision to go one way or the other. Okay, is it going to be more compelling to get people to think they're going to get rich quick, or is it going to be more compelling to them to realize, hey, you know, maybe we should stop destroying the planet because our children need to live on it. Okay? So we have all these different perspectives here and all these different arguments, and these are arguments where somebody's going to come out short if they lose. Okay? These situations are arguments where the arguer not only opposes a position, but must convince others to oppose it as well so that it does not get enacted. These arguments come from extremely strong convictions. Okay, these are people that really feel strongly about it. They know they're going to feel the consequences of the action or the inaction, and they need to say something, because if they don't, if they sit idly by and let it happen, they're going to regret it. Okay, so a few things to keep in mind. One, don't let passion blind you to facts. It's okay for you to feel very passionately about your side of things, very passionately about what you want to have happen. But if the facts do not align with you, you cannot just gleefully ignore them and say, oh, yeah, I'm not listening to your facts because they make me feel bad. Okay? Facts don't care. All right? Second, strong ethical practices need to be in place when writing an argument to prevail. You need to believe in what it is you are arguing rather than simply argue for the purpose of winning. Okay? When you're creating an argument to prevail, this is not a sporting event. Okay? We're not talking about something that's going to be refereed or judged or anything like that. You are not doing this as an intellectual exercise or as a game. You are doing it because it is directly going to affect you and your life going forward. Okay? So you need to ethically believe in the argument you are presenting. Okay? You need to feel it. You need to understand why people feel that way, why you feel that way. And it has to be more than just, oh, I feel like having an argument today. Okay? Third one, keep the ethics of your argument in mind as you craft your argument. Okay? Kind of goes without saying, but you need to make sure that you are keeping in mind your ultimate goal and the reasons why you have that goal, okay, as you're writing your argument. Okay? To use a real-world example of this, it could be a couple weeks ago, we had a case before the Supreme Court where people were arguing for or against the Affordable Care Act. Okay, that is an argument to prevail right there, especially on the part of the people defending the act, because the defendants need that to stay in place so that a bunch of people don't get kicked off their insurance. It will literally become a matter of life and death, especially in the pandemic time. Okay. The opposition also is trying to argue to prevail as well. They're trying to argue that purportedly, it's, I guess, the ACA is too much of a financial burden on the government, either the state or the federal governments. I'm really not quite sure about the logic of their argument there, to be honest, but they have some kind of argument that they need to defeat the ACA. Okay, so that covers arguing to prevail. That covers arguing with purpose. Okay. Like I said, it was a short lecture, so we'll go ahead and open it up to questions. I would ask that if you do ask questions, please use that raise hand function. I did have somebody who dropped the question in chat, and I did not notice it until about 5 minutes after he left the question, and he was wondering if I'd even paid attention to it. So when you raise your hand, it makes a sound, so I can easily understand that somebody's asking a question. So if we have any questions here, go ahead and ask them now. We'll do a brief bit with that, and then we'll talk over the antibibliographies. All right, who we got? Vanek. Proposal is not intended to be separated into 3 parts. It should be a single essay, just like you've been writing. We don't have to separate into introduction, action, argument, whatever you're thinking here. Just write it like a normal argument essay. But the idea behind it is not necessarily to just argue a point in general, but it is actually to advocate for a specific course of action. All right, then. So let's go ahead and discuss what I'm seeing in the anti-bibliographies that I've received so far. Okay. Now, I do have a number of them that I have received. Good amount of people in all my sections have completed this assignment. I just want to talk over a few patterns that I'm noticing in some of the assignments I've been receiving. Okay. Some of the major issues I'm finding with it is that there were a lot of people who created an anti-bibliography, but they did not use a research question. And as such, when if they evaluate the sources at all, they're evaluating them based on their credibility and not based on whether they're usable or not. And in fact, a few people are actually evaluating them based on, I agree with this because for this reason. Okay, let me just get out there. The point of this idea was not to evaluate them for whether they're friendly to your viewpoint or they agree with you or not. The point of it was to see if those sources would be usable in context with a research question to write an essay and use them as a research source. Okay, so it's not entirely about your opinion of whether they're right or wrong. It's about whether they are usable or not. Okay. Another thing I have noticed is that there's been some consistent stuff involving people not adhering to MLA style, MLA formatting styles for the works cited listings themselves. Okay. I have seen so many different variants on bibliographical listings. Just the last 3 days, I've been correcting these things that it isn't even funny. Okay. Some people aren't even coming close to MLA format. They're just putting it out as they please. Okay. So the Purdue OWL site, I've shown you on a few occasions, and I've given you links to. This site is the one that you want to go to for MLA formatting help. So that you know what you're supposed to be doing when you're doing works cited, and also when you're doing anti-bibliographies, because those listings have to adhere to that format as well. Okay. Some of the other stuff I'm noticing, some people were writing annotations that were way too long. Some people were doing 2 or 3 paragraph annotations. Introduce this. The annotations should probably be limited to a single paragraph where you combine both your summary and your evaluation. Okay. There were a number of people who contacted me and said they were having trouble with their teams, not communicating with them, and they were going to wind up with smaller bibliographies because of that. I'm not holding that against you guys. Okay. What I will hold against you is if you do like one person did, where they submitted 2 documents. One was the list of sources that the team had supplied, and then the other one was the actual anti-bibliography, and had only done 2 annotations just for the 2 sources that he supplied. He didn't bother to do annotations for the rest of them. I also know that at least I've received some, let's see. I see that turn here. Honestly, to tell the truth, it is in the instructions that I gave for this assignment. Okay, if I can bring up the slides here. Let's see. I have to find the right slideshow. Give me a moment here. Let's see. There it is. I found it. Okay, antibibliography. Okay. Okay, so it's right here. You'll choose a topic from current events in the news and collaborate on finding resources on that topic. It's also required to come up with a research question to focus your resource search. Okay, I did note when I gave these slides in the lecture that I misspoke when I said it had to be the group's research question. I said say that each individual member of the group had to come up with their own research question within the big topic that the group is using. Okay. So I did mention research questions. Okay. All right. So some of the other stuff that I'm seeing, there were some people in general. There were some people who were not quite getting the idea. Okay. It's actually kind of implied here that the research question is, since you're evaluating it for use in that for that research question, you need to be able to discuss it. Okay. You need to discuss your annotations in context with that research question. That's why you have it there in the first place. Okay. All right. Let's see. Okay. So right then, so that basically wraps up what I was noticing with them. For the most part, people were doing okay. Most part, people were kind of getting it. Other than the issues with the research questions, there wasn't a lot else that was going wrong with these. Okay, so let's talk over real quickly. Next week, you guys are going to be workshopping the proposals. You should be doing a revision workshop next week that will include your proposal essays, and if you decide to do the multimodal element, okay, you probably want to present that to your teams as well. Okay, as you may, I've got the assignment up here now, but just as a reminder here, you do have a bonus opportunity on this to get 10 extra points on this proposal assignment by including a multimodal file along with it, where you're doing a audio or visual presentation that is intended to rhetorically enhance the proposal and help to get your point across. As I mentioned here, it could be a flyer, an infographic, a video, a podcast, it could be a PowerPoint. When you turn it in, you can turn it as a separate file. But if you're going to be doing that, I would recommend, if you have that multimodal presentation already done, or at least a rough draft of it, I would present that to your teams along with the essays when you go to do workshopping next week. Okay, so they can give some perspective on whether they feel it really does anything to enhance your argument or not. Okay, so we're going to keep this one short here. We got about, I open up for questions, about 5 minutes here. And then we go ahead and cut you guys loose. Again, there's no collaborate session next week because of the holiday. And there will be another one the week after. Okay, so one more round for questions here, and then we'll cut you guys loose. All right, so we'll go ahead and cut you guys loose here. So again, next week, no collaborate session. There'll just be the lecture that goes live on Monday. Following week, there'll be another lecture, and then that'll be the final collaborate session will be the following Wednesday. Okay, so next week no session. Week after there will be a session, and make sure you guys are doing the work on workshopping the proposals with revisions. Okay. Thanks for coming to this session, and I'll see you guys the next time. And enjoy your holiday.